Patrick Harders, Audacious NIMBY, thank you so much for joining us on this special episode. I've got a great guest. This is going to be a lot of fun, but I first want to just say, you are making an impact. The NIMBYs out there, those who are looking to protect their backyards, are making a big impact, whether it's Georgia, Utah, Texas, all over the country, Pennsylvania. You're hearing about data centers. You're hearing about the people rising up. And in fact, the number one threat they're saying to the data center industry is the NIMBYs out there. Those who are saying, I don't want these in our backyard. Utah is absolutely exploding. And the center of all of it has always been Prince William County, Loudoun County, Northern Virginia. We are the hub of all the data centers. We're where the battle really began, and we've had a huge impact. And today I have a special show. I'm being joined by Kathy. Kathy Kulick is a close friend, a great neighbor, and we have a very interesting topic to discuss, and that's data center noise. So often you hear about the noise, but we really don't have a way to quantify like the impact it has on the community and what the noise is and how you go about measuring it. And we're going to give you that protection. So whether you're in Prince William County, you're up in Utah, you're down in Noonan, Georgia, or Texas, and you're having data centers come into your area, we're going to help equip you with the tools you may need to fight this. So this is my friend Kathy Kulick. Kathy, we've known each other for quite a number of years now. We've been in this data center fight, but tell our audience about yourself. When did you move to Prince William County, and a little bit of your background first?
Well, my family and I moved to Prince William County in 1991, so 35 years ago. And a few months after we moved into our home, Disney announced.
Yeah.
So the first couple of years of our lives in Prince William County were all about Disney. And that's when I learned who the Piedmont Environmental Council was and organizations in Prince William that were concerned about that. And that turned into a big national issue and hearings on Capitol Hill. And eventually Disney imploded. Certainly the opposition was key in keeping the energy up, but it was a bad business model. It was a bad plan.
Yeah.
And not to get off on a tangent there, but then I had a family to raise and a job to do. And so a few years later, I was appointed by then Supervisor Ed Wilborn to serve on the Transportation Commission and other civic work. And the Rural Crescent was adopted in 1998. And about that point, we all felt pretty good. I think we exhaled a little, and we thought,
saved the area.
Right, saved the area. With that kind of long-range planning, we felt we were pretty well set. And then I was visiting a friend of mine who's a small business in Haymarket in the winter of 2021, just about November, December timeframe. And she said, Kathy, have you heard about this big data center that's being proposed? And I said, no. And she said, well, you ought. So she put me in touch with a couple people in Oak Valley, and I got to watch a Oak Valley Homeowners Association meeting and see our then supervisor Pete Canlin talk about it. And it was clear there was a lot of concern and disappointment about the position he was appearing to take, that it was something he'd fought against. And I actually saw him at a Lincoln Reagan dinner in the spring of that year, and he had asked me for some assistance in reaching out to the battlefield, because I did serve for a short time as the executive director of the Manassas Battlefield Trust. And he wanted to connect with the National Park Service on it to get some assistance. And amazingly enough, I didn't hear anything more from him until I saw him on this video recording of the Oak Valley Homeowners Association meeting. And it was at that point that after that, I reached out to the president of the Homeowners Association there, Mac Haddow. And I said, this looks like a pretty big concern. And he said, oh, yes, it is. I said, it seems like we ought to inform people. And one of the ways we could do that is to use the homeowner and civic association networks. And so that's when we formed something called the HOA Roundtable At that point, it was just Western Prince William. Then we started bringing in homeowner associations across Prince William, and then we went regional with folks that in Loudoun County and in Fauquier County, and those are our closest associations regionally. But that is a network. It's basically an information and discussion forum, information exchange and discussion forum to inform. And if people are properly informed, they can make good decisions. They can decide what they want to be involved in and what positions they want to take and what they need to do to protect their families. So the last 5 years have been about really keeping the digital gateway in focus, because it, even today, is still the largest proposed and approved data center campus in the world.
Yeah.
And the impact it has in one of the worst locations possible, sandwiched between a national park, a state park, a 55 plus community on agricultural land in a critical watershed that supplies the drinking water to 800,000 people in the region. These are things that are really, and it really is a threat to historic sites, and it's preventing other historic sites, multicultural ones, from being even established and promoted. So it's preventing future generations, really, if it were to be built, from learning more about their own heritage. So this is an awful project that is terrible, and
worse than Disney.
Worse than Disney.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Disney, if it had been built, and it wasn't going to be very successful, and that's why the corporate entities at Disney really decided in the end that this was not something that they should really spend millions and hundreds of millions of dollars.
Civil War Disney wasn't going to.
Oh yeah, they were going to have a mock-up of the Monitor and the Merrimack going at it in a fake lake, and I mean maybe it had been entertaining for a few times, but it wasn't something that was going down well politically on Capitol Hill either. They were going to have an exhibit where you could experience what it was like to be a slave, and I remember Eleanor Holmes Norton hearing that for the first time and seeing her respond, and she said, "You're going to what?"
Yeah.
So those things, the data center, the huge digital gateway data center campus is far worse than what the impact that Disney would have, because it would spawn even more, and we know that because that's already happening. It's a heavy industrial use, and heavy industrial. Let me just think about the fact that would you want to have a steel mill or a chemical plant next to your home or next to your national park or your child's school? Well, of course not. And for decades, one of the main tenets of land use planning has been that heavy industrial is the least desirable development that you would want near a dissimilar use like your home, your child's school, or your national parks. National parks have the highest approval rating of any entity of the federal government. And that's an amazing thing. And of course not. Those are the places we go for rest, relaxation, inspiration. So of course we don't want an industrial use, a heavy industrial use.
That's still marked as light industrial.
And that's just false. That has to change. I mean, I think that I hate to blame the pandemic for yet one more thing, but let's be honest. The data center industry, when we went virtual because we were all being kept away from each other for a while during the pandemic, supercharged the data center industry, and they started to develop faster than they normally would have. But these facilities are now 80 to 125 feet tall. They are packed with more servers than they ever imagined before. They generate more heat, more noise, all these things. And so they are heavy industrial uses. They have thousands of gallons of chemicals, mainly diesel fuel on site. What happens when that leaks? There's just so many issues involved with them that they haven't had the time to adequately plan for the mitigation. And that means localities haven't been able to prepare, which is one of the big reasons that we have so many in improper siting. So this industry is extremely impactful. I often say the plan for the digital gateway was 37 of these giant things. What would you think with 37 steel mills or chemical plants in this? People would be aghast at that. They're aghast at one.
They're aghast at a super Walmart, but we're looking at this happening, and obviously the federal government's failed us, the state government has failed us. They put it just in the local government as if it's a local issue, and it's so much larger than that. And so that's why you're hearing this outcry throughout the nation.
Well, the excuse has been, that's a local issue. when the problems are something that state and federal government have traditionally in the past dealt with.
Yep.
But they're not dealing with it now. And a lot of that has to do with, let's be honest, this is one of the most well-resourced industries ever in the history of mankind. They don't just have a lot of capital to invest in building these. They have an enormous amount of capital to invest to lobby for them, to donate to politicians. And with that kind of money coming in, they can buy any lawyer they want, any marketing team they want, any lobbyists they want. All these people team together and they sell these things as great projects to vulnerable localities. It's hard to know what's worse, is to leave it in the locality or to take away the localities. I mean, there's West Virginia right now, they passed a law that localities can't even weigh in on these things. It's all the state government. And that's a terrible thing to do. I think each level of government has their responsibility.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, to give an idea of the scope, I know like Chicago, they're talking about building a new stadium, and there's Indiana's talking about, Illinois talking about, and it's a $5 to $8 billion stadium. And the Digital Gateway just came, and keep in mind there's two of them. There's the Digital Gateway, and then there's Cosmos, the Dallas Innovation South coming in. But the Digital Gateway in the lawsuit claimed this to be a 40 to QTS and Blackstone, a $40 to $50 billion project, which is insane to think about. Like, I don't know of anything since World War II that our country's involved in that we've gone to this size and scope of development.
There's a tremendous amount of speculation in it, and that and excitement among the investors, the deep-pocketed ones. And so, yes, they're investing massive amounts of capital. I have the occasion to brief a local zoning official and their organizations. And one of the first slides I put up is, you're under a lot of pressure. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here briefing you, of course. Why is that? Well, then I put up the capital investment for the year 2026. It's hundreds of billions of dollars for this industry. We talk about the big players, Meta, Google, Microsoft, and it becomes clear with that much money involved. And it's a story everybody knows well. And so that's the main reason we're all faced with this, is the amount of capital investment. It's certainly driving the stock market, and everybody loves it. There's a lot of other things that are driving that too, but the industry would do itself a big favor if they would think a little bit about what they're doing and where they're choosing to put these facilities. They're not quite good neighbors. They never have been. I'm asked a lot when I talk to industry representatives, we want to be good neighbors. Tell us how. And my answer usually is something like, well, you can't be a good neighbor to a dissimilar use, like a residential community, certainly not to a national park, not a state park, not a critical environmental resource. You have a chance to be a good community partner. But to do that, you have to be really responsible in everything that you do. You have massive impact. You start to realize that and regulate yourself, you could end up being the hero. The hero to help us meet the challenges, the international challenges. But they're so far from that right now. Right? And part of it's just the speed that they've developed and they've built out. So it's going to be a real challenge going forward.
So one reason obviously we've been talking about doing this discussion for a while is you were appointed to be on the DCOAG. Let's talk about what was it? What is the DCOAG? What did you guys embark on, and what did you guys discover?
The DCOAG is the Prince William County Data Center Ordinance Advisory Group. Our purpose was to advise the county staff in establishing new ordinance with respect, zoning ordinance, and the data design and construction standards manual updates with respect to data centers. Part of that was also to establish a new noise ordinance. Of course, our noise ordinance is in our criminal code, so it's outside of zoning. And this all started when in the spring of 22, the Roundtable received a request from the Great Oak community. This Great Oak community is in Manassas, Virginia, near the Manassas airport. And by the way, Prince William County is the fastest developing data center market. We don't have the most operating, that's Loudoun County, our neighbor to the north. But so this is a perfect place, some sort of ground zero for developing appropriate ordinance and where it should happen. And when we had that outreach from then the HOA president there, I made a site visit with two of our committee members. One, Dr. Ali Stoger, who is head of our health and safety committee, and the now famous Dr. John Liver, late Dr. John Liver, who's fortunately no longer with us, who also served as the planning commissioner for Supervisor Bob Weir for a while. And we went out and we got out of our car, and when we got out, our ears directed us to where the noise was coming from. It's coming from the right, through the trees, 600-foot mature tree buffer behind the homes on that street. It sounded like a fleet of big commercial zero-turn lawnmowers.
Yeah.
But we couldn't find the lawnmowers anywhere.
So it had a 600-foot buffer, which is a lot more than what you're seeing since then. But
yeah,
trees, woods, everything.
Everything, mature trees, all kinds of foliage.
Yep.
You couldn't even see where it was coming from. You could just hear it,
wow.
And you could, your ears, everything would direct. You knew where the direction.
Yeah.
But you couldn't see anything. And as we're standing there, the HOA president comes walking up and he says, "You can hear it, can't you?" And we're like, you can't unhear it.
Yeah.
That is something we didn't appreciate right at the outset. Dr. Liver was doing his work. He was a former NASA scientist. So he was starting to get a handle on this. As we went through the process of trying to determine, taking the readings, determining how loud this noise was. And a few months later, by the time we had collected a lot of information and the HOA president and some residents were collecting regular sound readings of the planning commissioners and everything. This was after we had actually, as the roundtable committee, had gone in to talk to Chair Wheeler about it. And with a little pressure, some of the officials came out. That led to the board directing the county staff to form a committee, heads of agencies and so forth, to determine how they were going to address this.
Now, was this one of the massive data centers?
So this is the Amazon Tanner Way. Interestingly enough, it's where a former brick plant used to be.
Okay, yeah.
So it's always been industrial there.
Yep.
Well, always, for a long time.
Yeah.
But the brick plant would start at 7 and shut down at 4 in the afternoon.
It
would go all night. Data centers operate 24/7. So, and the problem with the design of that facility is they essentially use adiabatic cooling, which is a lot of fans to move air.
Yeah.
Not a lot of what we call evaporative cooling or refrigerated air. So they use the kind of cooling you might find out in the Southwest, like in Arizona, because they have low humidity. So that kind of works.
Yeah.
But the problem is it needs enormous, massive fans. And those were the things. And then they had side louvers on the building where the louvers would open, they'd suck in the air, they'd run it through. As they're running it through fast with these massive fans, it would cool it down, run it over the servers, and exhaust it at the top.
Yep.
So this committee was formed, and then the recommendation was to put together an advisory group of stakeholders, meaning industry, commercial development council, most affected residents, and that was called the Data Center Ordinance Advisory Group. So we started in 23, and by the end of 24, we had the group had been pared down. The industry folks had been removed. The lobbyists had been taken up. There's no reason to have lobbyists on an advisory group, but guess what? They were considered stakeholders. And
stakeholders, the lobbyists. That's funny.
Yeah, we weren't getting very far with all those folks. The industry folks, the lobbyists, some development attorneys. So once the staff decided to remove them, and that was with the help of a couple of one or two board members that really felt like this needed to be resident centric and focused. It was then we really started making progress. We focused solely on the noise issue because that was the thing that was causing so much discomfort and so many issues with residential communities in the county. So we focused on that, and we really started making progress. Brought on we had a consultant at that time, but they weren't highly skilled in acoustical engineering. They were great documenters, researchers to find best practices. But the point is, we were the ones breaking the new ground. We were the ones with the problems because we were Prince William County, I mean, was developing so fast with data centers.
This is and massive scale data centers, the new data centers that started coming out after 2020.
Exactly. And this is where we were going to be creating the ordinance that everybody else was going to need as they started entering into and entertaining bringing this industry to their localities. And I mean, not just in the region, I mean across the country. So there wasn't a lot defined in best practices. We were the ones that we were the test case. So that wasn't a very productive exercise. And so the county, I mean, the deputy county executive, to his credit at the time, started bringing in what we consider real experts in acoustical engineering. David Nelson from Arkansas, and then Eric Swerling from Rutgers University. And with those two experts, nationally recognized, we started making real progress. And there were 50 test sites established across the county, a lot of testing done at all hours of the day and night. And the purpose of that was to really get a handle on where were the, and also testing areas that didn't have any data centers so they could understand what the impact would be. Quieter areas, literally residential communities, rural areas are going to be much more disturbed if you bring in an industrial use. And so that was, but the other point to do it was to try to understand what other noise sources were there in the country. We didn't want to adversely affect restaurants, grocery stores, hospitals. They have big cooling units. And they make noise, but they don't make it consistently all hours of the day and night. The point was to try to craft new ordinance that wasn't going to have unintended consequences. We really achieved all of those goals. And it was probably by July of 25, so last year. And the Great Oak community was leading the way with testing more and they did surveys of their community. If you're testing all night and people are discomforted by the noise, they would get up at night and they would fill out a survey. This noise is bothering me on this scale, and I'm not sleeping or whatever. So they would be able to have these anecdotal comments about what this noise was doing for them. So it was a tremendous amount of data and research done to inform this. And to the consultants' credit, both David Nelson and Eric Swerling, they were a little skeptical that it was causing that much discomfort for the residents, that there wasn't something else going on. Until there was this epiphany, because they couldn't get the same readings the residents were getting, with their own monitors. They started out monitoring the noise in the Great Oak community with iPhones, but after a while they bought professional style noise monitors. So they were really able to test very, very accurately. But it was bothering them day and night. So this was a big concern for them. I mean, they had issues with pets going off their food. They had children not wanting to go to the tot lot, kids not being able to sleep in their homes, thinking monsters were coming through the walls. When you have walls vibrating and you have noise that you can't unhear, it's quite disturbing to residential life. So, all these things were happening, and yet the consultants were directing county staff to take these readings, and they couldn't get the same readings as the residents. And then a simple epiphany happened.
What's that?
In July of 25, one of the consultants directed the county staff to put the meter on a 15-foot pole so they could simulate what it was like to get the reading at a typical second-story bedroom where most people sleep on the second floor. And all of a sudden the readings went boom.
So that was the change. People are complaining they're in their bedroom, but nobody thought to elevate. And why did that make such a big difference?
Because the readings that were taking lower, those readings were quieter.
Really?
Yeah. And that comported with a lot of the experiences that residents were telling us, that one resident moved his child to the basement so he could sleep.
I remember this
story.
Sleep
in the basement, but he couldn't sleep in his room on the second story.
So we talk about this, the DCOAG. It's obviously a Prince William initiated. It's not just a group of like 6 local yokels that are doing it. John Liver was a NASA engineer. Yourself, you're very educated. The group was, but what type of money was actually invested? Was it?
It was about $1 million in consultant work up to that point. It's about
over
2.5 years.
2.5 years, $1 million invested. So probably the most exhaustive study done to this point on noise levels in data centers that we know about. Obviously, the industry may do it, but they're not going to share that information.
Right. This was an objective noise study, and it was done by people that came in with, Nelson and Swerling came in with a very objective perspective on the entire thing, and they came out of it in the end. By the time we got through, because it's in July, all of a sudden they're presenting the findings and they're saying, well, here's this epiphany. Put the meter on a 15-foot pole. It's like testing in your second-story bedroom. Aha. And so then they were able to separate that noise from just other noises like traffic noise and things. And so it was really key to get those measurements that people were, those real things that people were experiencing. And so all of a sudden, there it was. And so the limits that they were talking, they were recommending to put in the new county noise ordinance, they also went one step further and said, we need to test not just in decibel limits, we need to test with frequency octave bands.
Okay.
Because some frequencies are going to be higher than others. And this is where we start to get into the issue. The data center noise is low frequency.
Yeah.
All right. So when we get up into the high frequency, we're not going to find those measures violating limits. So in order to be sensitive to it, and when we're talking about being able to separate 24/7 data center violators from the restaurants and the gym and the
concert venue or whatever.
Right, exactly. This is key.
Yeah.
Being able to do this. And so they wrote up the draft ordinance and the presentation and the staff report and everything. And the DCOAG members, we were all reviewing it. We felt like we really had a good answer, something that would help people and protect these places that we love so much.
Our homes.
Our home, our national parks, our schools, everything. And so then we're a month later in August and we're reviewing this and we get a call from the deputy county executive who says, I got to meet with you people like tomorrow.
Because the county had paid the $1 million. They had paid for this and they've also invested heavily into the data center industry because our tax base is a lot of it's set up on the data centers.
Now, and so we're like, okay. And we get in the room and he says, I was asked to go to a meeting with the industry and it was hosted by the Chamber of Commerce. And they told me they can't meet these draft measures that we're putting into this ordinance we're going to propose to the board.
And what, from draft measures, like what were you looking at? Decibel levels?
DBA,
what range? Yeah.
DBC, and these octave bands. But what's important to note that the consultants had recommended certain criteria to establish continuous noise. The noise has to be present and continuous for a certain amount of time for it to be established as continuous. So for all the noise emitters, all other businesses, other entities that were not continuous, they weren't
airplane landing, a concert going,
all those things, they would vary a certain amount over, and this was a short period of time, 15 seconds, 20 seconds or something like that. They wouldn't be regulated by the octave band limits. They would go back to the original noise ordinance that had been in place for 40 years. So there was nothing to affect the vast majority of business types. But we have so many data centers, it affected a lot of business. Okay. So the data center industry was saying, a lot of people were saying, we can't meet these limits, at least not now.
And it's it's like 65 decibels or more. Is that correct?
For, you mean the DBA?
Yeah.
I mean, it's 55 and 60 in residential and sensitive areas. 55 night, 60 during the day.
Which is pretty loud. I mean,
it's pretty loud. So that's why the octave bands had to be used to filter out the low frequency noise. So that if those low frequency noises were hitting a certain limit, and they took a lot of time to figure out what that limit was, that reasonable limit was, to provide relief, but not to shut down a business necessarily. Okay, so there's a lot of give and take, but some of these data center operators said we can't meet it, and so the deputy county executives hauled us in and said, well, we really can't do this because they can't meet it. So I'm proposing that for the first year or so, we raise these limits 6 decibels across the octave band scales. And we said, have you talked to the 2 expert consultants? And he said, no, I just made this decision myself.
Pick a number
in the middle somewhere to give them some relief. And we didn't agree with that because we needed to have some sort of
scientific reason.
Because
there could be a lawsuit. I mean, the data centers could sue you. You need to have something backing up why
they would go in and say there's no scientific basis to just moving these things around 6 decibels, and therefore
we're not going to follow.
Arbitrary.
Yeah.
Essentially. So he said, well, this is what I'm going to recommend. I'll put your objection into the staff report. And we were pretty pointed about the fact that we didn't like it. We, you know, and we had an attorney in our group, and he said, actually we had two, but one in particular said, this isn't the way to handle this. What you should do is stick to your limits. And if they can't meet it, have them discuss it with staff and ask for abeyance of prosecution so that the county doesn't need to prosecute. They'll work with the operator and give them a year, whatever they need to retrofit. Sometimes this equipment is big and it's very expensive.
Yeah.
So the determination by the county, deputy county executive, was, well, I don't think they should be cited at all. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was a point of the limits. Well, you know, it's in the criminal code. Nobody wants to wear stripes, but nobody's ever gone to jail for violating the noise ordinance in Prince William County. I don't know where they've gone. I just couldn't find a case of it. So, all right. Well, before, you know, we could get this thing to the board clerk to get this on the board's schedule. In the meantime, unfortunately, our supervisor here in Gainesville, Bob Weir, had passed. And a lot of politics really sort of rolled in on this. Yeah. And
very quickly.
And it became the preferred choice of some to try to push through a totally ineffective ordinance while they had the votes to do it.
Yeah.
And in early October, instead of putting our recommended noise ordinance forward, and this was after the consultants had provided a basis background document providing all the scientific evidence as to why these octave band scales were needed to provide relief for residential communities when you have this big industrial use next door that never shuts off. Absolutely never.
And the low frequency, and that's
the low frequency noise.
That's important. Well, at least I know from like my audio experience, it's the subwoof, the bass that travels the furthest.
Yes.
And so if you have an outdoor audio system, let's say, you have to really protect the sub, because that's what's going to travel into the neighbors' yards where the tweeters won't.
Right.
And so that's my simple analogy, but
imagine if that goes on 24/7 and never shuts off.
What type of distance do you think you're talking about when you're talking the low decibel levels with a data center?
They can travel miles, like 4 to 5 miles.
And they're, you know, the old ones had a 600-foot buffer. Now you're seeing them in Haymarket and some areas around us with 150 feet off.
I can't imagine what's going to happen to those residents when they get to the point that those data centers don't have power, so they're not powered up yet.
Yeah. And when you start looking at, obviously, like for us, Digital Gateway, Cosmos, you look at Utah, Texas, some of these mega data centers that you're talking the $30 to $50 billion projects. Those, you have 27 of the data centers, or for us, we would have like 38 data centers if both of them got approved, that are all 110 feet tall. You could be talking, 5-10 miles away, potentially, when you get the cumulative noise where all of them coming in together.
Imagine that, you know, for a system, I was talking about adiabatic cooling. It's mainly fans. That's the problem with the Tanner Way facility next to Great Oak. That's what was causing so much noise. When you have the evaporative system, which is typical like air conditioning systems that we have here in Virginia, on a data center, they're placed on the roof and they have a 500-ton capacity. That's the largest the industry makes.
Yeah.
And you have typically there's about 120 on a roof. If you want to get a sense of this, just go outside and sit next to your own house air conditioner and stay there.
The
only thing is you'll have a little relief because eventually it'll shut off.
Yeah.
But just consider that going on and on and on. And so then you have 500-ton units. You have 100 of them on a roof. You have 4 or 5 buildings in a typical campus. Yeah, that creates an enormous amount of vibration, low frequency noise. It's really something else. Now, you know, some data center operators can kind of combine cooling systems. You know, everybody's been really worried about the massive water use.
Yeah.
Right. And when it's truly off the charts, it's because they're using it for cooling.
Yeah.
So with that complaint, the industry shifted to air cooling, right? But air, a massive amount of power, of course, but a massive amount of noise.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the developers in this area have moved to air cooling. And this is what's really driving a lot of the noise right now. And so when we got into October and the political chicanery started, I'll just use that word.
Yeah.
It was a lot of the supervisors moved to disband the DCOAG, had the votes without Supervisor Weir being on the board.
So they had the elections in process.
Right. That's
exactly there's
right.
An election coming up
right.
November 4th or 5th, whatever that was. So then you had the people who had passed all these data centers, Supervisor Bodie, Supervisor Franklin. Yeah. Exactly. So we had the basis of those supervisors then had this information. They knew it's coming into the board. And so then you're saying, was it Supervisor Bodie? Was that the one that made the first initial?
Oh, Supervisor Angry.
Okay.
Made the motion to disband the DCOAG. not because we weren't. It's interesting. Not because we weren't doing anything, but because we met so many times.
Yeah.
And we were so busy. He said we were done. But the bottom line is the industry again and its influence got to the right folks, and they had 4 votes. And without Supervisor Weir there to vote no, they got it through, and they disbanded us. The next week, Supervisor Bodie moved to dispense with regular order, get the board to authorize a public hearing for 2
so no notification, just
to consider his version of the noise ordinance, which he claimed his staff had developed over the last couple of weeks. Never mind, it was 2.5 years and the best consultants, in the country. And there they had this basis and background document, which gave all the scientific evidence. And to Supervisor Vega's credit, she read it, and she asked, and Chair Jefferson allowed direct questioning on the dais, which is unusual.
Yeah.
And Supervisor Vega asked Supervisor Bodie direct questions coming straight from the basis and background document. And every time it was, no, I haven't reviewed that. No, I haven't.
So how unusual is that for a supervisor to come up with the ordinance on his own?
I can't recall it
ever happening. Yeah.
They didn't even, one of the big problems with that, which is absolutely outside of regular process, is the board didn't even hear from the staff. Yeah. They didn't hear the staff's recommendation. They heard nothing about all the work that the DCOAG had done. They heard nothing about the basis and background. Nothing. All that money and everything that was spent was totally pushed aside. Supervisor Bodie made the motion for the public hearing to consider only his version. Yeah. County attorney, verified with the board. She said, you're only going to hear about this one. If you want to hear about another proposal, you'll have to hold another public hearing. And Chair Jefferson wanted to have the public hearing set when the new supervisor was elected. The election.
Yep.
And so she wanted the authorization to occur on the
2 weeks later.
Yeah, on October 28th, so that that public hearing would then occur 2 weeks later with proper public noticing, which we know is important. And so then it would have happened. That would have been the first meeting the new supervisor would have
been in there,
been in the room and been able to weigh in and properly represent the Gainesville district. When Supervisor Bodie was asked, why are we hurrying this? And he said, well, citizens of county have been waiting a long time for this. They need to have relief.
Yeah.
And I think everybody watching this could probably figure out what would have provided the citizens proper relief.
Yeah.
And it's not what Supervisor Bodie's version of it is. My question has been for a long time, what was his training, his education, his credentials to do this? He just kind of pulls this out of his back pocket and says, we're just going to add a couple of low frequency measures, and which are so high, the 2 low frequency measures that made this different from the current ordinance, they're so high they would not have any effect on the Tanner Way facility where all this was first realized back in 22.
Yeah.
And so, I have to ask the question, Supervisor Bodie, you've got a great handle on acoustics. You got the cure for cancer near the back pocket too.
Yeah. So obviously, it's one thing we talked about is, a lot of corruption. I made the comment in 2021 that I think Prince William County has become the most corrupt county in the state of Virginia. And we saw that over the years as many data centers went through. But one thing that I've had a lot of people reach out from Roanoke, from Appomattox, different data centers, Pennsylvania, wanting to know, how do we arm ourselves? Because a lot of times you and I didn't sit down to become data center experts or anything like that. Like, never was this entering our world. We watched what was happening in Loudoun County, which was a different time in 2015 to 2020.
Right.
But what happened here is what we're seeing around the country. So for somebody that's tuning in that, maybe up in Utah or down in Georgia, and they have these massive data centers coming in, what would you say you would look to, because obviously there's a water issue. There's the turbines, which Coalition just posted a video to protect PwC on a turbine going off and how loud those are. There's the diesel generators and how loud those are. But just on the coolant and the noise level of that, what would you tell somebody from the experience you have of understanding the noise levels? Like, how do they educate themselves? How do they get the information? Who would they go to? Can they find the DCOAG study, anything like that? How do they arm themselves against these data centers coming in their neighborhoods?
Yeah, I think that this is a big problem, but fortunately, a lot of the work that was done by the DCOAG is still on the Prince William County page for the Data Center Ordinance Advisory Group. So anyone can Google that, Data Center Ordinance, Prince William County Data Center Ordinance Advisory Group, or even the DCOAG. I think we'll bring up that page. It's difficult to navigate. We as the members didn't have any control over it, but all our meeting minutes are in there. The basis and background document written by David Nelson, I believe, is still linked there.
Okay.
This was the problem. If Prince William County had adopted that ordinance, that would have stood out as model ordinance, and that would have come up any county anywhere that did a best practice research. This is what they do. Look around the country for a locality that's
actually
got this problem and actually doing something about it. What would they do? What's their ordinance like? I mean, for the exercise that the first consultant went through with the DCOAG, they did best practice research for Fairfax and King George and Fauquier and we're like,
there's nothing out there,
right? Loudoun, but Loudoun was dealing with some of its own issues and still doesn't have an effective ordinance in place. But you kind of look at it and you go, we're not going to find what we need because we're the test case. This is where this thing is growing and where this problem is happening. Loudoun County started their data center alley in an area that was pretty good distance from homes.
Behind the airport.
Right. And they don't have any, they didn't have 2 national parks they had to be concerned about. There's just a lot of things they didn't have to deal with. But they started, they were running out of that land and they started building closer to homes, and now they're really running into this issue. So they're starting to have the same problems we are. But
and they're powering up. But that's what a lot of people don't understand is they're built, and everyone goes, well, they are quiet. I don't even see anything going on there. And you have to tell them they're not even working. They don't, because it takes sometimes years to get the power brought into them.
That's a big problem. Exactly.
That we pay for.
That's right. The power, there's just a lot of, and I mean, they build them fast because once they get their entitlements, they want these things built.
Slap them up.
Right. That's right. So, but they'll stand there for a while before they even get power and get operating. And so when those things power up, that's going to be a big problem in Gainesville because there's a lot of them being built and they don't have the power. I mean, we experienced data center noise 4.5 miles away when the NTT data center did a load test, and it didn't last all day and all night, but it was definitely, it's the largest one in Prince William County. So, that was, and again, generator noise is a problem. It's very disturbing. It's very loud. And then there's also diesel fumes that come off of it. All right. When that happens, whether it's starting up or shutting down, there are fumes. And we know this because of the Pareto community has recorded this many times. And there's also, these gas turbines. I mean, there are other noisemakers on a data center other than the cooling system. But the issue with the cooling system is that's the thing that never goes away. That's the thing you have to learn to live with in the background all the time, in the place where you have your family's greatest financial investment, where your kids are sleeping, where you're sleeping, or maybe you're not sleeping, and you learn how to deal with that. That's a health issue. It's terrible. And our local officials have not had the courage to deal with this properly, and they should. And the industry should know this is coming. I mean, I'm still hopeful that the board can find a way to get all the hard work. You can get that adopted, what our consultants came up with. But it is hard to understand how this all happened, and it happened because there was a seat open.
Any opportunity they take.
But to take that kind of advantage of that opportunity, that's where the money and the influence comes in. And that was an egregious example of it. And if anybody wants to read about it, there's a really great article Politico did by Ariel Wittenberg a few months back. And it's a long article. You have to really invest some time into reading it. But she begins with that story.
Yeah, it's we've made jokes that this is like Yellowstone or the Wild West out here of just insanity and craziness of something you've never seen. But I think other people are really experiencing. As I started off our discussion, I said, I went through a social media feed, and everywhere around the country, it's data centers, data centers, data centers.
It's like a wildfire of opposition just burning.
Yes.
Across the country, and it all started here.
Yeah, we're 5 years into the fight, and I heard even Mr. Not So Wonderful talking about Virginia and the 30%, as if the 30% increase on our electric bills was the only thing we were concerned about in Virginia. But he said we can't treat the people of Utah like they did in Virginia. We've got to, bring our own energy. But that's one of 10 different problems. So
it's right. These are massive, heavy industrial facilities.
And
when you get right back to it, this is the effect of heavy industrial on residential communities, parks, schools, all the things that we love, where we love to spend our time, raise our families. That's been well known for decades in the planning, professional planning. They know this, and it's so well and broadly documented. Why the data center industry has been able to slip through and not be defined immediately when they come in the door as heavy industrial.
Yeah.
Is a curiosity.
Yeah. Well, this has been a discussion that I've wanted to have out there because I think it's overlooked. Like, obviously lighting was that I was excited on the DCOAG to look at the lighting aspect of the light pollution, which is a different thing. But the noise levels and what people have had to live with, and obviously once that happens, they can't sell their home. They're trapped. So there is a reason for us to say, not in our backyards.
Right.
We need to rise up. They need to hear from us that everyone out there that we need regulations in this. And both of us are Republicans. So a lot of times people think this is the leftist, crazy, like environmentalist. I'm like, I am a hardcore conservative. You're a hardcore conservative. I'm a conservationist. I love the outdoors. I love nature.
Right.
I know your family's the same way. But this is something that we need to be on the forefront, standing up. And your work was very helpful in the DCOAG. There was a lot of work and energy and time put into it.
It absolutely was. It was gut wrenching to go through last October and see it just dismantled. One of the silver linings of doing this over the past 5 years has been working across party lines and making so many good friends on both sides of the aisle. The politics, it's so unusual today in the age that we live in, where politics, it's so dividing.
Yeah.
Families people can't talk to
can't
each
have Christmas
other
together anymore. Yeah.
But I mean, even yesterday when we were at the meeting yesterday, and where we're sitting at a table with people on all sides of the political aisle, and we're coming together on this issue because it matters to everybody.
Yeah.
There's no politics in this, none at all. And I think that the sooner our state and our federal officials understand that this is not a partisan issue, because sooner or later, and it's coming pretty fast, if you're hoping to be an elected official and you're trying to advocate for more data centers in your community, you're losing.
Yeah, cashing at the very end, because I think we are at the end of people not knowing. When we start getting into the data centers, they're going to be using 10 to 12% of the overall energy in the country, and in the state of Virginia, it's much higher than that, obviously.
You're not going to be able to afford your electricity, and you're not going to sleep at night.
Yeah.
These are two bad things.
Yeah. So, well, I think there's a sense of to be encouraged. The knowledge is out there, the tools are out there, and just like anything, it's the grinding of, like, we need to shine light on the bad things going on there, speak truth, use the tools that are out there legally. We've used the court systems, we've gone through elections, we've been fighting for 5 years, and I think ultimately we're going to be victorious. And You know, I think it will be a time where we'll revisit the DCOAG. But I think the other thing is just, you know, why I wanted to discuss this is for all the other communities out there
Oh, yes.
to, like, very few other, now that this is out there, I don't think many other counties are going to pay to get a noise ordinance study because
It's been done.
Yeah.
It's there. It is. I think one of the members of the DCOAG said we were over the target.
Yeah.
We had it.
Yeah.
And that's when they had to
had to shut it all down.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, and it was absolutely clear to the industry that we had the answer to provide limits for livable communities. Imagine that.
Yeah.
But that was such an awful thing to have to want. You can actually live in your house, and it's the thing you invested in. Nobody's saying you can't build something across the street or next door.
Mhm.
You just can't make my home unlivable.
Yeah.
Really, that's what we were getting at. And so I think that there's so much expertise now in our county,
Mhm.
and also in Loudoun County. I work with people in other neighboring jurisdictions a lot, and people are very informed. They're very well educated on this issue. And I think what will probably come out of this are some really great groups of expertise that people can tap into. Certainly, people can go to the HOA Roundtable website, and if they have a question, the website isn't that up to date. We don't have anybody paid to do that, but there's also a page where people can put in questions and ask for assistance, and we can try to provide folks that have a lot of expertise in certain areas.
Yep.
Certainly when questions come in about power and about energy, we know there are folks that are really good at that and can help them and try to guide them. But it's going to be up to each locality to really take on this battle and to demand that their local government do their due diligence, and to make sure that they hold them accountable.
Yeah.
And when they do that, when some of these local and state, federal officials start losing elections because they're not listening to their constituents who just want to sleep all night, who just want to not have a power bill that they can't afford, right? Just basic things.
Or devalue their home.
Right. You have these situations, and when they start losing elections, things start turning around. And we've already done that in Prince William County.
Yeah, we've been turning the elections, but we got more to go.
We do have more to go. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
And that's really important. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I might see you door knocking down in Occoquan. No comment.
Check my calendar for next spring.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining in. I'm sure a lot of people, we're going to put links to everything we discussed. So to the DCOAG, through the county's website, so people could find the information. It's going to be a little tough, but definitely it's worth looking into for these communities that are just starting to get inundated by the data center movement that we've been fighting for 5 years.
I'm really proud of these communities, though, and these groups that are popping up everywhere that are just saying, oh, no. I mean, I had a Danish reporter contact me the other day and said there's a plan to build them a big campus in Denmark. And she said people are just pissed.
Yeah.
And I said, well,
that should be the reaction. 5 years ago, that was not the reaction where it's like, well, we'll see what happens. They're not that bad. We need the tax revenue now. It's that's not this case.
It's all about tax revenue. It's just that we can't seem to, we don't seem to see the property taxes go down. And so how's that working out?
Yeah.
It's a problem for sure. But the industry could help themselves out a lot by starting to act responsibly.
Yes.
Haven't seen it yet, but maybe we will.
Yep.
One day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining.
No,
it's always a pleasure.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll post the links below. Great information, great discussion, and good luck on your fights out there. You are making an impact. I appreciate it.